please welcome to the stage Philippa Aslanis, Executive Director of Intimo Apparel, Catherine Blizzard. She's a business advisor, general manager, team lead, business manager, customer service specialist and hospitality specialist. Sarah Cummings, Principal Sarah Cummings Consulting and co-founder of Teach TED. I want to say welcome to the Georges River Businesswomen and thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you also for wanting to share your stories with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this year's theme is Choose to Challenge, and predominantly it's about pay equity and gender equality. So I wanted to just touch on that and what it means to you, because obviously you've all been in the workforce for an extremely long period of time. So if you can share on your experiences in your Choose to Challenge moment. If I can start with you, Philippa.
I think I chose to challenge when I left the corporate world and decided that I wanted to build my own business because there was no glass ceiling on my earning potential as a woman. So that gave me the opportunity to be able to build a business and have my own directive in that business. So I'm forever grateful. And I think choosing to challenge myself has been the biggest challenge because it's all about stepping out of your comfort zone, having a lot of self-belief, and I think really, really backing yourself as a person and as a woman to actually strive through it.
Catherine?
Yes, I'd have to agree with that actually. I've always loved to challenge myself by being uncomfortable because if I'm really comfortable in something, I know that it's just too easy. So I think we really do as people to keep that excitement, enthusiasm in life. We do need that challenge, and being uncomfortable is the greatest way to actually, once you do have that level of success, it's worthwhile success because you know it was really hard to start with. So I've like yourself, I do believe it's all about believing in yourself and really following your vision and being very passionate about things.
Sarah, how do you feel about the Choose to Challenge? Where would you say that fits in with you?
I think if you asked my mother, she would say I've chosen to challenge since the day I was born.
Yes.
And similar, I think it's, I've always had the belief that life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, and I have a terrible tendency when things are being a bit too calm to throw my own spanner in the works. But I think it leads to a much more interesting life.
Now, you've come from financial industry, so it's very male-dominated. So in terms of having to challenge and work your way through to get into those senior management roles, how did you find that before you left the corporate world?
Definitely very challenging. I had the benefit of some wonderful coaches, which sometimes I think was given to me to fix a problem, but actually I found it really beneficial for myself. It has been hard. I've worked in parts of financial services that are incredibly heavily male-dominated and in a lot of places had some of those values that the Mayor was talking about from the 40s were still current in the 90s.
So how did you cope with that? How did you get through that and fight? Because that can be quite intimidating for a woman in the workplace when you want to, I guess, progress and you sort of feel like you're hitting a wall because of that dominance. How do you deal with that?
I have the advantage of having what they'd call a type A personality. I do have the confidence that comes from having a wonderful family and a lot of strong women in my family and men who've supported me through things, which meant that I just kept pushing ahead. But you do feel like sometimes it takes you 3 times as long to get places. And interestingly, a lot of the things that I would be promoted for, they were then surprised when I kept being that very strong female.
Were you seen as being aggressive as opposed to...
Yeah, amongst other terms that were used. But on the flip side, I had some really wonderful champions through that as well. I think financial services is really hard as an industry. I have friends who work in other industries who, some of the stories that I've shared with them over the years, they've just been absolutely horrified and it was a real surprise, whereas to me, it was just commonplace to some of the behaviours that you had to put up with. I was always a fan of speaking up, and I have always had the logic that because I do have the confidence to cope with a few knockbacks, I have a responsibility therefore to speak on behalf of other people who may not have that, whether it's because they have less security in their personal lives or less confidence or less job security. I've always worked on the approach that I'll be able to get a job somewhere, so the worst thing that can happen is they can fire me.
And Philippa, you came from a very interesting background just prior to you starting your business. I know it's 20 years ago, but I wanted you to share that experience because you were pregnant at the time.
Oh, yes.
And just the environment that you were subjected to, so if you could share that, because you're all really actually choosing to challenge, because being in that environment where it is quite male dominated and quite intimidating, these are the types of ladies that actually push through and make changes for us all. So can you share that story for us?
So I was in IT and I was contracting between children, and I was working for a financial markets company, and I was pregnant with my second daughter, Ainsley. I just have to mention her name because I always forget to mention her name. And so I was probably 6 months pregnant or so, and I used to go and do all the IT and make sure everything was, operating the way it's supposed to operate. And I was on the floor with the sales people, and I had a conversation with one of my colleagues a particular day, and he said to me, "Why are you here? You should be at home looking after your children, your eldest child, and you're pregnant. There's really not a space for you here." And I was like, "What?" And that was 26 years ago. So I just think, wow, we've come a long way, but it was really confronting for me to think that I wasn't as valued as the male in that environment. And it still actually affects me today.
Now, Catherine, you've never actually worked in the corporate world, but have you got any experience where you've had that type of, barrier in work?
Unfortunately not, actually. I wish I did have some experience to share with everybody today. But I think I went through life not even thinking about gender. My parents, growing up in a Greek family, of course I'm Greek, it was all about hard work. It was all about being successful and ambitious, and it was never about gender.
And you've always been in the Georges River.
I've always, lived and worked, and it was really just one business that I did leave the Georges River at the time to start this business outside of the Georges River Council. But yes, always lived and worked and played in this area, and never really had any issues to share with anyone about gender inequality. I employed people based on skill and attitude. I never employed anyone on gender. I never had any problems either, actually.
So we're all focusing on very strong women. So what I thought today is we're going to look at some very interesting quotes from very powerful and influential women over some time, and we're going to structure our questions around that. So are you happy to do that, and we'll get started? So the first one is from Marissa Mayer, and she's co-founder of Sunshine, but prior to this she was at Yahoo. So her quote is, "If you push through that feeling of being scared, that feeling of taking risk, really amazing things happen." But it seems to me that most of you are outside that comfort zone, but at some stage you felt scared. Mm-hmm. So what did you do to overcome that and just keep going through? So if I can start with you, Philippa?
I think for me, there was one person that had a defining moment in my life where she really believed in me, and I think just having the support of one person just drove me forward. And I think that has, and for me, I want to pay that forward too with women in business.
So it's important to have a nice structure and people that back you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I think I always had plans in place. So there was really the feeling of feeling scared was actually exciting for me, because I love being scared in business, because it heightens your awareness when you're scared. It's because all of a sudden there's risk, and what am I going to do to overcome this risk? So in a way, being scared is healthy in a way in business, because it helps you identify risk.
But you mentioned planning, so planning is extremely important.
Planning is extremely important.
And making sure you have a roadmap of where you want to go.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sarah, how about yourself?
Having moved around a lot as a child, I think the biggest thing that it gave me was resilience. So you learn that even when you're scared and you do something that you think could go horribly wrong, you get through it and you're still okay. So even, if you fail at something, you still get up the next day, your family and friends still love you, and you can move on to the next thing. And I think having learnt that as a child, it made it a lot easier as an adult to be willing to try new things. So my motto is just do it anyway and see what happens. And when all else fails, turn to Dory. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. And I've found that approach really works. So when I'm stuck and I'm scared, I just go, just do something. It actually doesn't matter what it is, just do something to move forward. And as you say, it helps you think more quickly about what might need to happen.
Because fear can freeze you. So basically, but fear can be used to your advantage to make sure that you put plans in place.
And have the frenetic energy to get through it.
I think that's very important. Okay, so don't you dare underestimate the power of your instinct. So intuition, I think, is very important in business, and I think many of us underestimate how powerful and how right this particular tool can be. So Catherine, you talk about intuition when you're running your cafes, especially when it's about customers and identifying. So you helped that business in Carlton that was a rundown cafe. Can you take us through your intuition and what made you change and how you used that to turn it into a cafe that was a success?
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of us females, perhaps males, but a lot of women do have that power of intuition. And that really helped me. Intuition helps me understand. I don't know, I've got this heightened understanding with people and understand and really listen to what they're not actually saying, but what they're telling me when they're not saying it in words. And that's really helped me. For example, when I help a cafe and I'm outside and talking to customers, how was your meal? And I'll say, oh, that was good. Well, that's actually telling me it was really bad, because or it was average. You know, it was at least average, because if it was really good, you'd say, oh, that was great. And there's a very big difference between...
And an empty plate, right?
Yes, and an empty plate. And so there are those things in terms of customers, what they're saying to me, but what they're really meaning, and I think intuition really helped me. And also with people in the teams that I worked with, you know, having that intuition, how they're behaving, what they're saying, which gives me an indication of how they're actually feeling at work, and then helps me to work through, I guess, their concerns or what they need training with. So yes, it has helped me with both customer and people I work with.
I'm going to turn this one on you, Philippa. Has there ever been a time where you've actually trusted your instinct but regretted it?
I wouldn't say regretted it, that's a big word. But, you know, things happen all the time, and it may, like, I think if you have the overall vision and you can really feel the energy and, you know, you have that gut instinct, that you just got to go for it and try it, because if you don't do it, you'll never ever know. And I think it's really important just to step forward. And if there is a hiccup, it's always a learning experience. And I think that helps you with your growth too, in business and personally. How you respond, how you react, and it's just all about that journey.
Sarah, what about you? What about you using your instinct? When have you got it right and gone, yay?
I like to think most of the time I've got it right, in the sense that I'm quite happy with the life that I've led and the people that I've been able to help and the people I've connected with who've helped me. To me, part of instinct is actually about pattern recognition. So being able to look at things and see what the pattern should be. I've got a maths-based, pattern-based brain. To go, okay, it looks like it should flow there, but then there's a gap here. What needs to go there? So, you know, I think intuition is incredibly powerful, but a lot of what we might think of as intuition is actually just being really curious about things, learning a lot, and then seeing how that might apply to something that we're looking at now.
That makes sense. So let's go on to the next one. I love this quote. If people are doubting how far you can go, go so far that you can't hear them anymore. So, and we all have those people who like to niggle in our ears, and sometimes those voices are much louder than our supporters. So is there anybody, I'll start with you actually, Sarah, that you would say, yay, not listening to them?
Look, there's definitely people who have suggested for various reasons along the way that I couldn't possibly achieve what I thought I might, and I don't know if it motivates me. I tend to just, I'm always a big fan of listening to it and trying to figure out what it is that they think I can't do it for, and make sure that I have that big covered, because, you know, part of it is also about being aware of your own limitations and not blindly going into things. But I am really pleased that with all of the achievements that I have, a lot of those people who previously said, oh, you know, you're probably not suited for that or whatever, have then turned around and been really pleased and proud of what I've done.
Is that important to you to get that sort of vindication?
Yes, I have a desperate need for people to like me.
Catherine, how about yourself? Have you had those naysayers, and how do and
Of course, I mean, people, they don't really doubt you, but they doubt the circumstances. So if I had 3 young children, a family, how can you start this cafe when you've got this family to look after? How will you do it? How will you get up at 6 o'clock each morning? How will you run a business 7 days a week? And at one stage I had 2 cafes, so I was leading a team of 50 people. I was rushing from Paddington to Surrey Hills, doing this 7 days a week, trading from 7 a.m. to midnight 7 days a week. How are you doing this? So yes, people do doubt how far you go, but when you have a dream and when you're so passionate, when you love what you're doing, it's just so easy to achieve it. And it's not like I wanted to prove them wrong, but I just never listened to anybody. And if they did say that, it's like, I can do this, trust me, I can do it.
you actually raised a very good point as a working woman, and I think you've raised this before, Sarah. Men will never get asked how you're going to juggle family and work, but a woman that has ambition and drive and wants to succeed, it's the very first question we often get asked. How do you feel about that? Does that help set in with the mummy guilt, like the parental guilt, or you just basically write it because you've got your family down pat?
No, I actually had systems in place even in my home. I think I'm very systems, but it's all about systems in the home, in the business. Set up a plan, be prepared, and it will get done. Everybody had a task. You know, there was the hour of power at home, you know, from 7 to 8 o'clock. Kids were bathed, dinner was served. So we all worked together. So as long as I think you have certain systems in place, you're communicating with everybody in your family, things will get done. Of course, ultimately you do need the support as well. So you can't do anything without, I think, family support as a
Philippa?
female.
How do you feel about that?
The doubting part?
The doubting part?
I think it comes from a place of love from people that actually want to support you. And as Catherine said, it's like we have many hats and many roles as women in that we're running a household and a business. So often it is, how are you going to do that? Are you sure you can cope, manage, do all that kind of thing? And, we are driven. I think women can do a lot of things at once, which is really good, and we're really good at managing. I find that all the women that I know can manage a lot of things, but definitely the doubting, I think, comes from a place of love. And then, and you meet so many people along your journey, and I think you collect the people, or you connect and you build a community around the people that are going to support you as well and be, your biggest cheerleaders, and I think that really helps too. And it also helps with your growth and learning and understanding about the type of women that you want to be, or the woman that you want to be, and the women that you also want to have in your tribe that are going to support you through your household as well as running a business. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I like this one as well. We need to accept that we don't always make the right decisions, that we'll screw up royally sometimes. Understanding that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. From Adriana Huffington, she's the co-founder of the Huffington Post. So a lot of people have a fear of failure. We don't like to screw up, and this often stops a lot of people from starting a business or just taking on a challenge in life. So it's clear that mistakes are part of your journey. So definitely. Sarah, can you share a time where you screwed up royally, and what was the result? Or how did you fix it and just move on?
Yeah, probably screwed up royally many, many times, and often quite publicly. I think, though, sometimes you just need to be a bit gentle on yourself. So Tanya mentioned in my weird CV that doesn't seem to make sense to many people, I am a marriage celebrant, but when I had smaller children, I have a desire to scale things and build things that will scale. So I started this group of celebrants called Engaged Celebrants. And because I wanted it to work really well, I scaled from the beginning. So, I had a group of about 15 celebrants, and I ordered all these magnets and all of these carry bags and everything that was all heavily branded. And then because of some family reasons, I had to stop the business. And so I still now have all of those living in my garage because I just can't let go and admit one day it will be revived. I keep paying the domain name. But I think part of it not letting go is probably something I need to learn how to do better. But also I think it's just going, you know what? I tried. I wouldn't do it any differently, because if I hadn't started to build it from the beginning at scale, then it's never going to get to where I want. And, you know, I'm doing the same thing with Teach TED. So this is TED, and they're adoptable bears. There's a few out here in the community. And, you know, we ordered 5,000 books of our book. I've still got a whole stack of them sitting in my dining room. But I'm quite determined that we will sell them. But if I just did, you know, a print run of 10 books, then I couldn't help lots and lots of people. So I want to make it possible for me to make this a really big thing, and that means taking a risk and accepting that when it doesn't work, you don't go, oh, well, I'm never going to do that again, because then, you know, it's back in that safe space again. And also, you know, I'm very driven to help other people. That's why I do what we're doing with the Teach TED stuff. And I want to help as many people as possible. So for me, it's a bit of a go big or go home.
Just to give people a bit of understanding about Teach TED, just give us a bit more of an explanation so it gives context to people in our audience.
So anyone who has kids know that kids learn best through play. And what you probably also know if you have kids, that there's a whole heap of medical things that happen that you've never experienced before. And unless your child is critically ill, most of their treatment will be done by people who generally don't deal with a lot of kids. And one of the things that we know from kids is if they're not aware of something, they become anxious. And when they're anxious, they're harder to treat, they don't recover as well, and they need escalated interventions. But it's really easy to resolve kids' anxieties by letting them play through something and being able to talk through it. But because as parents, we don't know what's going to happen, it's very hard for us to support them. So basically we build tools, a lot of it's freely available, we're for purpose, for profit, that make it easy for parents and carers to play with their children through particular experiences. So when they get to it, they're super calm about it. And also as a parent, you don't feel like you've failed. If, you know, my daughter went down screaming for an operation, it was the most horrendous thing as a parent to think, oh, well, I really buggered that up. There you go, I screwed up royally. In public, the entire hospital heard her.
And we're a Georges River business. I'm going to claim Teach TED as a Georges River business.
It started at the local playgroup.
There you go. Catherine, have you got a story you can share with us about screwing up royally and learning?
I think we've all screwed up at some point, but I think it's important too that we sit at a time in our life and look back and think, I actually did everything I wanted to do. And whether you've screwed up or not, at least you've tried, because you don't really want to wake up one day and think, gosh, I wish I had done that all those years ago. And I can sit here today and I feel at peace knowing that I've done everything that I wanted to do. I mean, for me, screwing up royally was just really a boring story of another cafe I opened, and it was I tried a different business model. So my models are always about takeaway, quick service. I love that quick transaction with customers. But I decided to do something different. I wanted a bar, I wanted table service, and all of a sudden I went from my casual, non-pretentious cafe models to this sparkling, premium venue where there was shiny waiters and shiny floors, and it was like, oh my God, I can't do this. This is just not me. I like to be in jeans and, you know, torn t-shirt and working behind a coffee machine. So with that one, that was a huge investment in money. But it was something, the vision, there was just no vision. I couldn't see myself completing, you know, succeeding in this venue. So I sold it within 12 months. And I accepted that I built something where the vision didn't resonate. And I really couldn't get out of bed to go to this place, because if I don't have vision, I can't have passion. So I closed it, and I lived happily ever after.
Philippa, Philippa, how about yourself?
I think this time last year, 12 months ago, we are a face-to-face business, and we are a field of bra fitters. So, and you know, there's 1,500 women that do what I do, and it was our responsibility as an executive team at Intimo to ensure that they could continue their business through COVID. So we pivoted our business from a face-to-face business to a virtual business, which is, you know, to take your existing clients and talk to them over Zoom, and then you've got ring lights and social media and the ring light falls over and you're trying to do a live, and I think learning all of that technology in such a short space of time and pivoting in our business to being a virtual business and being able to offer an experience like that, we had so many failures. It was so, and you know, I relied on my clients to actually help me, and they were part of the process. But we learnt so much, and I think it also gave them joy because they were actually helping me. And I think that is what business is all about too, relationships. So being able to, when you do screw up, that you've got people there supporting you and just saying, keep going, we can do this. So that was huge last year.
We've got one more before we go to our roving mics. So this is, success doesn't come from what you do occasionally, it comes from what you do consistently. So all of you you like to be challenged from what I can hear, and our consistent message is that you challenge yourself, have a plan in place, fear is good, accept your failures, but something has to be there that you do consistently. So Catherine, what do you do consistently that helps you? And might not be regular, because I know you have some people have to stop for family and do things, but what is it, that one thing that you need to do consistently to ensure that you are staying on track?
Well, I goal set. I'm constantly setting goals, and I constantly make plans.
Do you reward yourself for your goals? So if you achieve a goal, do you reward yourself, and what do you do?
Well, I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm a bit of a party animal. We like to go out and have a drink and celebrate success. So we set goals and we do celebrate success, and whether that's at a short holiday or just drinks with friends or a lovely restaurant, we celebrate, yes.
How about you, Philippa? What do you do consistently?
It's spending time in my business every day. I think that's really important, whether it's a small time frame. It could be 15 minutes, it could be an hour every day, just being in your business. I think you need to consistently show up and be in your business, which is very powerful because that's when you have the success.
Sarah, what's the consistency for you?
Consistently inconsistent. People who know me will know that don't do the same thing twice. My hair changes every time I go to the hairdresser. But I think consistently being curious and consistently connecting with people, as much as my career looks like a little bit of a hodgepodge, and if you look at my pay rate, it kind of looks like the heart thing, but occasionally flatlines. Hopefully at naught and not negative. But I think consistently connecting and giving back is what gives me the energy to keep going. And what I've found is, across everything that I do, it's about connecting people and telling stories and hearing stories.
Nice.
I think it's time. Are you ready to take some questions from our lovely audience today?
Only if they're really easy.
Would anybody
Easy
like to ask
questions.
any of our panel today any questions?
Yep, that's very easy, thank you.
Yes.
Hold that mic, aren't you? Yes, just a general question to all or some of the great panel. Can you tell us why the Georges River area has been good for your business?
Did you? Well, actually, I find Georges River such an eclectic area. The cafe in Carlton was such an experience because it was in an industrial area. We had factories, we had 3 schools, we had 3 massage parlours, we had childcare centres. So the customers who'd walk in, we'd have a man in a tradie outfit, a girl in a mini skirt, the headmistress from the local high school, kids running around. There was laughter. They all had the same thing in common. They loved great coffee and great food. And I think that eclectic range of people was so interesting for me because when I worked in the eastern suburbs, the customers looked the same. They were all, trendy, same, hipster. So there was the hipster, but here I just had the lot, and I'd scratch my head and think, what are we selling these people? What are we going to do here? How are we going to make this business the local favourite? And it took a little research, and at the end of the day, it was wholesome food. They all had that in common. They all wanted wholesome food. But eclectic eclectic people and lovely, lovely people.
Have we got any more questions?
Supportive.
Sorry. Hi, thanks so much. I loved hearing about style that you just talked about then. And I come from a very male-dominated tech science industry as well. So I'm really interested in hearing, did you ever have to change your style, whether it be like your personality or how you present yourself to try and fit or to be more masculine? Or have you really embraced femininity in what you're doing? Thanks.
I think for me, I think it's really important that you be yourself, because that's what creates, it just creates change. And Ainsley, my daughter, is in construction management, and I believe that, you know, she's forging a path in a male-dominated environment or industry. And her project manager always says to her, just be you, keep forging through and being you. And I hope that I've been able to inspire her to be who she is in her industry. So I think definitely it's be you. I wouldn't change yourself for the industry. If you're passionate and love what you do, I think the results come from your work as well.
I do think, I think that's right. We should all be able to be ourselves in at work. I think in financial services and being a startup in the tech space as well, I think there's a lot of that as well. At the moment, we still really only have, like, whilst we are getting better at females getting into the senior roles, we actually don't have a lot of diversity within those females, in the sense that because you have to work your way through so many things, you end up with the people like me who are quite outgoing and able to push through things. Where if you look at males in leadership, you have such a variety of personalities and backgrounds and experiences. We don't yet have that in females in a lot of industries, because the space just isn't there for them yet. And I think that's something that everyone needs to work towards, creating those spaces, because diversity isn't just about whether you're male or female. It's about, you know, where you grew up, what your socioeconomic status is, what your cultural background is, what your, you know, spiritual beliefs are, who you are as a person. And that is that next level of diversity that I think we need to start striving for, so that all women, even the quieter, more introverted ones, also have the ability to have their place at the table and
They
be
have
heard.
a voice.
Yeah.
They have a voice. Do we have any more questions? Quiet bunch. I have one. Catherine, you're taking a break, so you decided to take 3 months off, and you're at the end of that 3-month break
I am.
because you want to start your next adventure.
Yes.
Did you want to share with us what you want to do, or are you still trying to find it?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Tanya. See, Tanya didn't give us any idea of what we were going to be presented with today. So every question's been a bit of a surprise, including that one. Well, you know, I actually, for the first time in my life, I gave permission to myself to stop. Because for 30 years I've been on the go, and I've loved every minute of that, going and striving and achieving. But just stopping was so wonderful. And of course it came at the end of COVID, you know, in December 18 actually was the day. December 18 was the day I said, that's it, it's all over, I'm having 3 months off. I felt like a little leaf in the wind, and I didn't know where I was going to land. And, you know, it's also when you've achieved everything that you set out to achieve, it's like, well, what next? And one of the things that now excites me is the idea of vlogging. Can you believe it? Video blogging. I'm thinking, I'm going to give that a go. My son says, Mum, you'll only get 10 followers. I say, well, it doesn't really matter. If I get 10, at least I've tried, and I can just shut it down and no one will ever remember that I was even on there. So that, we'll see. I'd like to impart some of my hospitality knowledge to people, because it's probably time now that I give back, because it's all about, you know, receiving and working hard to build my family, my wealth. Now it's time to give back, and I'm actually ready. I have no more fire for business. I'm now ready to help others build their business.
So there's permission to forgive yourself and give time out and be kind to yourself.
Yes,
So-
I think so.
And the common thread is that you all want to give back. So that's very important. So can we all thank the ladies for coming? Oh, one more question, sorry. We've got one. Oh, we have a question. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Oh, sorry, I'm just curious as to one of the largest challenges that you had in business and what strategies you implemented to achieve the challenge, to cope with the challenge.
I have separate ones for my consulting versus my startup. My startup is funding. Everyone I talk to goes, that's amazing, I so wish I'd had that, but how do I make people aware of it before then? And also we have bigger plans to help people all around Australia and around the world, and that needs funding. So how do you convince people? I found that particularly hard in startup, where a lot of we have quite an immature angel investor population, so they don't tend to take a lot of risks. They're quite conservative, and also a lot of them are male. There are actually quite a lot of females coming up, but it means that they don't necessarily understand the problem. They think we're some fun little toy for kids. They don't actually understand the financial benefits. And then on the consulting, it's how do you get business? And the best way I've found with both of those is just to go and talk to people. The more you share your story and listen to others' stories, the more you find solutions to things.
Okay, so I want to say thank you for those who asked the questions. I hope you enjoyed today. Please join me in thanking our wonderful guests, Philippa Aslanis, Catherine Blizzard and Sarah Cummings.